Commander Elena Vasquez stared at the message on her screen. The words glowed in red letters that seemed to burn into her eyes. Immediate evacuation ordered. All Terran forces withdraw to safe distance. Do not engage enemy fleet. She read it 3 times before the meaning truly sank in. High Command wanted her to run. They wanted the entire 7th Fleet to turn around and flee like scared animals. Outside the bridge windows of her flagship, the Defiance, Elena could see the rest of her fleet. 237 ships hung in space around the Kepler 442 shipyards. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and her 3 massive dreadnoughts formed a defensive wall between the enemy and humanity's most important industrial complex. Ma'am? Lieutenant Commander Harris stood beside her chair waiting for orders. His young face showed the same confusion she felt. What are your orders? Elena looked past him to the main display screen. The enemy fleet showed as red dots moving toward them. 12 different alien species had joined together to form the hegemony Armada. Their ships numbered in the thousands. Each red dot represented enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The tactical computer had already run the numbers. If they stayed and fought, the 7th Fleet would be destroyed in less than 6 hours. Every ship would be lost. Every sailor would die. The computer gave them a 0% chance of victory, but Elena kept thinking about what lay behind them. The Kepler 442 shipyards built 60% of humanity's warships. The orbital factories produced medical supplies for 30 colonies. 12 million people lived and worked in the system. If the enemy took this place, they would have a clear path to Earth itself. Ma'am? Harris asked again. Should I give the order to retreat? Elena stood up from her command chair. Around the bridge, 20 officers waited for her decision. These were good people who trusted her judgment. They had families back home, children who needed their parents to come back alive. Open a channel. To High Command, she said quietly. Channel open, ma'am. Elena took a deep breath. She could feel every eye on the bridge watching her. In a few minutes, her words would be recorded in history books, assuming anyone survived to write them. High Command, this is Admiral Vasquez of the 7th Fleet. I have received your evacuation order. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I respectfully decline. The 7th Fleet will hold this position. The silence on the bridge was complete. Even the soft hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade away. Harris's mouth hung open. The tactical officer dropped his stylus. Ma'am, the communications officer said in a shaky voice, High Command is requesting clarification of your last message. Elena almost smiled. Of course they were. No fleet commander in human history had ever refused a direct evacuation order. It was military suicide. It went against every rule in the book. Tell them the message was clear. We are not retreating. The 7th Fleet holds the line. She cut the channel before High Command could respond. There would be angry messages later. Probably court-martial orders if anyone lived long enough to carry them out. But right now, she had more important things to worry about. All ships, she announced over the fleet communication system. This is Admiral Vasquez. I know you've all heard the evacuation order from High Command. I want every captain to understand what I'm about to say. She looked around the bridge again. Her officers had stopped staring and were now working at their stations with renewed focus. They knew what was coming. The enemy fleet outnumbers us 12-1. Our computers say we cannot win. High Command says we should run and live to fight another day. They are probably right. Elena walked to the main display where the red dots of the enemy fleet grew steadily larger. But I want you to think about what's behind us. 12 million civilians, the shipyards that build our ships, the factories that make medicine for our colonies, our path home to Earth. The red dots were close enough now that the computer could identify individual ship types. Massive dreadnoughts led the formation. Behind them came hundreds of cruisers and destroyers. Fighter carriers launched clouds of small attack craft. Every military manual says we should retreat when facing impossible odds. Every tactical computer says we should preserve our forces for a better battle. But those manuals were written by people who never stood where we stand now. They never had to choose between doing the smart thing and doing the right thing. Elena's hands gripped the railing as she stared at the enemy fleet. She could almost see the alien commanders in their ships, probably laughing at the small human force that dared to stand against them. I will not order any of you to stay. Any ship that wants to follow the evacuation order can leave now. No court-martial, no shame. Sometimes the smart choice is the right choice. She waited. The entire fleet communication system stayed silent. No ship moved from formation. But I believe some things are worth fighting for, even when you cannot win. Sometimes holding the line matters more than surviving. Sometimes you have to stand in the dark so that others can see the light. The enemy fleet was close enough now that individual ships appeared on the visual sensors. Massive alien vessels, with designs unlike anything in human space. Curved hulls covered in weapon ports. Ships built by species that had conquered half the galaxy. To every ship in this fleet, you volunteered to serve. You swore an oath to protect humanity and our colonies. Today we get to prove that oath means something. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when the fight seems hopeless. Elena returned to her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No panic, no fear, just sailors doing their jobs. The enemy will be in weapons. Range in 30 minutes. All ships, battle stations, prepare for combat. Red lights flashed throughout the ship as the Defiance went to full alert. In the weapon bays, crews loaded missiles and charged energy cannons. In engineering, technicians pushed the reactors to maximum power. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for casualties. Elena opened a private channel to the other ship captains. 23 faces appeared on her screen, men and women who commanded the pride of the human fleet. Questions? She asked simply. Captain Martinez of the cruiser Olympus spoke first. Admiral, my crew is ready. We understand what you're asking of us. My destroyers will screen the main fleet, added Captain Wong from the Istanbul. We'll buy you time to hurt them. One by one, every captain confirmed their readiness. These were people who had spent years training for this moment, even if they had never expected it to come like this. Good. Remember, we don't need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to make them pay a price they didn't expect. We need to show them that humans don't break easily. The alien fleet was 15 minutes away now. Their lead ships were enormous, each one larger than Elena's biggest dreadnought. Sensors showed thousands of weapon systems powering up. The tactical computer updated its projections every few seconds, and every update showed the same result. Total human defeat. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. Put it on screen. The main display changed to show the bridge of an alien ship. The creature sitting in the command chair looked like a giant insect, with multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Its voice came through the translators as a cold, mechanical sound. Human vessels. This is Stratarch Zekthul of the Hegemony Armada. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Elena stood up. Open a channel. Channel open, ma'am. Stratarch Zekthul. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Terran 7th Fleet. Your surrender demand is denied. We will defend this system. The alien's multiple eyes seemed to focus on her with surprise. You cannot be serious. Our fleet contains over 3,000 vessels. You have fewer than 300. Simple mathematics proves your defeat. Mathematics never fought a battle, Elena replied. If you want this system, you'll have to take it from us. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. Very well. Your species will learn the cost of defying the hegemony. All ships, begin the attack. The transmission ended. Elena sat back down in her command chair and watched the enemy fleet accelerate toward them. In 10 minutes, the real battle would begin. "All ships," she announced to her fleet. "Remember what we're fighting for. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for our people to prepare. Every ship we destroy is one less threat to our colonies. Make every shot count." The first enemy missiles appeared on the sensors, launched from maximum range. Hundreds of white streaks crossed the darkness between the two fleets. "Point defense systems online," Elena ordered. "Return fire." The 7th Fleet's own missiles. Launched in reply, smaller salvos aimed at the enemy's lead ships. The two waves of weapons passed each other in space, and then the dying began. Elena gripped her chair as the ship shook from nearby explosions. On the main screen, she watched human ships disappear in brief flashes of light. The destroyer Fearless took a direct hit and broke apart. The cruiser Phoenix lost its main engines and drifted helplessly, but the humans were fighting back. Elena smiled grimly as she watched one of her missile salvos punch through an alien cruiser's shields. The enemy ship exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up space for miles around. "That's one," she said quietly. The alien fleet kept coming. More missiles filled the space between the fleets. Energy beams lanced across the darkness, seeking targets. Ships on both sides died in the crossfire. Elena's tactical officer was counting losses. "Admiral, we've lost 12 ships so far. Estimate enemy losses at 6 vessels." Not a good trade, but better than the computers had predicted. The aliens were learning that humans could fight. "Ma'am," the communications officer said, "I'm getting reports from all across the fleet. Captains are requesting permission to begin ramming attacks." Elena nodded. It was exactly what she had expected. When human ships were too damaged to fight effectively, their captains would try to ram enemy vessels. It was wasteful and desperate, but sometimes it worked. "Tell them to wait. We're not desperate yet." But even as she said it, Elena knew the truth. They were losing. The enemy's numbers were too great. Her fleet was being whittled away ship by ship, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The alien commander had been right about the mathematics. 3,000 ships would eventually defeat 300, no matter how bravely the smaller force fought. But Elena had been right, too. Mathematics never fought a battle. Numbers didn't account for courage or determination, or the simple human refusal to give up. As the battle raged around her, Elena opened a channel to Earth. The message would take hours to reach home, but she wanted her superiors to understand what was happening here. "High Command, this is Admiral Vasquez. The 7th Fleet is engaged. With enemy forces at Kepler 442, we are heavily outnumbered but holding position. Casualties are mounting, but morale remains high. The shipyards are still secure." She paused, watching another human ship die on the main screen. "I want the record to show that my crews are fighting with honor and courage. Every sailor in this fleet volunteered to be here. We understand the odds, we understand the cost, and we choose to pay it." Another pause as enemy fire rocked her ship. The enemy expected us to run. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they're learning what it means to fight humans who refuse to retreat. Whatever happens here, they'll remember this battle. They'll remember that humans don't break. Elena closed the channel and returned her attention to the fight. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet determination. They knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew they were making a difference. On the main screen, the enemy fleet pressed forward, ship after ship advancing toward the human defensive line. But their advance was slower now, more cautious. They had expected to brush aside human resistance like dust. Instead, they were learning that some dust could cut like glass. The battle was far from over, but Elena had already achieved something important. She had shown the galaxy that humans would fight impossible odds. She had proven that some things were worth dying for. Now she just had to make sure that their sacrifice counted for something. The first day of battle ended with numbers that confused the alien computers. Stratarch Zekthul stared at his tactical display in his command chamber, his multiple eyes trying to process information that made no sense. His fleet had lost 47 ships. The humans had lost 93. By any mathematical measure, this was a victory for the hegemony. His forces still outnumbered the enemy by more than 10 to 1. The human fleet should have been destroyed completely by now, but the humans were still fighting. Tactical assessment, Zekthul ordered his primary advisor, a tall creature with gray skin and no visible emotions. The enemy continues to resist beyond predicted parameters, the advisor replied in a flat voice. Our battle computers cannot explain their behavior. When ships reach critical damage levels, they should withdraw or surrender. Instead, they intensify their attacks. Zekthul clicked his mandibles together, a sign of frustration among his species. He had conquered 17 star systems for the hegemony. Every previous enemy had followed logical patterns. Take enough damage and they retreated. Lose enough ships and they surrendered. It was simple cause and effect. But humans seemed to operate by different rules. Show me the recording from the destroyer incident, he commanded. The main display changed to show footage from earlier in the battle. A human destroyer, badly damaged and leaking atmosphere, had accelerated directly toward one of Zekthul's cruisers. The human ship's weapons were mostly destroyed. Its shields were down. Any rational captain would have tried to escape. Instead, the human captain had rammed his dying ship into the much larger alien vessel at nearly the speed of light. Both ships had been destroyed instantly. Play the transmission, Zekthul said. The recording included the final message from the human captain. His ship was breaking apart around him, fire and smoke filling his bridge, but his voice remained steady. This is Captain Torres of the Indomitable. My ship is gone, but I'm taking you bastards with me, for the colonies, for Earth, for everyone we couldn't save. The transmission ended with the double explosion that had lit up space like a new star. Zekthul had seen suicide attacks before. Desperate species sometimes tried them when facing defeat. But those attacks came from panic and fear. Captain Torres had sounded calm, almost peaceful. He had chosen to die as a tactical decision, not an emotional outburst. How many similar incidents have we recorded? Zekthul asked. 17 confirmed ramming attacks, 8 successful destroyer-level impacts against cruiser-class targets, 3 successful cruiser impacts against dreadnought-class targets. The humans appear to view suicide attacks as standard tactical options. That was the problem, Zekthul realized. His computers couldn't predict human behavior because humans didn't value their own lives the way other species did. The tactical programs assumed that self-preservation was the highest priority for any rational being. Remove that assumption, and all the calculations became meaningless. What is the status of the human fleet? 144 ships remaining. Significant damage across all vessel classes. Their flagship continues to coordinate resistance from the center of their formation. Zekthul studied the tactical display again. The human ships had formed a defensive sphere around the shipyards. Even damaged vessels maintained their positions, continuing to fire as long as they had power. Several ships that should have been abandoned hours ago were still launching missiles. Send another surrender demand, he ordered. To their flagship? 2. All of them. Perhaps some will see reason. The communications officer opened a channel to the human fleet. Zekthul composed his thoughts carefully. He had crushed the resistance of dozens of species, but this required a different approach. Human vessels. This is Stratarch Zekthul. Your losses are severe. Your position is hopeless. I offer terms for your surrender. Withdraw from this system and your lives will be spared. The response came quickly from the human flagship, the same female voice that had defied him before. Stratarch. Zekthul, this is Admiral Vasquez. Your terms are rejected. The 7th Fleet holds this position. Admiral, be reasonable. Your ships are dying for nothing. This system will fall regardless of your sacrifice. Then you'll have to take it from us. Every meter, every station, every ship. The channel closed abruptly. Zekthul stared at the display, in something approaching amazement. The human admiral sounded as determined as she had 12 hours ago, despite losing nearly half her fleet. Analysis of human leadership psychology? He asked his advisor. Insufficient data. Previous enemy commanders have always accepted surrender terms when facing similar casualty rates. Human Admiral Vasquez displays behavior patterns outside our experience. Outside their experience. That phrase had appeared in 17 different tactical reports since the battle began. The humans kept doing things that weren't in the computer databases. Sir, his sensor operator called out, the humans are repositioning their fleet. Zekthul watched the tactical display as the surviving human ships began to move. Instead of falling back to a safer position, they were actually advancing. The damaged vessels that should have been in the rear were moving to the front of their formation. What are they doing? Unknown, sir. The movement pattern doesn't match any known tactical doctrine. Zekthul was beginning to hate that phrase. Unknown. Outside parameters. No match in database. The humans were rewriting the rules of space combat with every decision they made. All ships, prepare for renewed attack, he ordered. Target their most damaged vessels first. Perhaps we can finally break their will to fight. But even as he gave the order, Zekthul suspected it wouldn't work. The humans had already shown that damaged ships fought harder, not weaker. Fear and desperation seemed to make them more dangerous, not less. The second day of battle proved his suspicions correct. The human destroyer. Relentless had lost main power 6 hours into the fighting. Its captain, a young woman named Sarah Kim, had kept fighting using backup systems and manual controls. When Zekthul's forces tried to finish off the crippled ship, Captain Kim did something unprecedented. She ordered her crew to open the missile tubes manually and load them by hand. Without computer guidance or power assistance, her sailors physically moved 300-kilogram missiles through damaged corridors and loaded them into launch tubes. Then she fired them at point-blank range into an enemy cruiser. The cruisers. Shields couldn't handle weapons fired from such close distance. Captain Kim's makeshift attack punched through the alien vessel's hull and destroyed its main reactor. Both ships were consumed in the explosion, but Kim had taken an enemy cruiser with her dying destroyer. Her final message was recorded by nearby ships. Manual loading complete. Firing solution locked. See you in hell. Zekthul reviewed the tactical data 3 times before accepting what had happened. A crew operating without power had manually loaded and fired ship-killing missiles. It should have been impossible. The missiles weighed too much. The launch tubes required computer guidance. The physical stress should have killed the humans attempting such a task. But they had done it anyway. Sir, his advisor reported, we're receiving communications from the other hegemony fleets. They're requesting updates on our progress here. Zekthul's mandibles clicked with irritation. The other commanders expected him to have finished this battle in a matter of hours. Instead, he was struggling against a force 1/10 the size of his own fleet. Tell them the human resistance is stronger than anticipated. We require additional time to complete the operation. Sir, Admiral Vextar of the 4th Fleet is offering to send reinforcements. The suggestion stung Zekthul's pride. He commanded the largest and most powerful force in the hegemony Armada. Asking for help to defeat a single human fleet would be humiliating. Declined. We will handle this ourselves. But privately, Zekthul was beginning to wonder if his confidence was misplaced. The humans had now held their position for 36 hours. They had cost him nearly 100 ships. Most troubling of all, they showed no signs of breaking. Tactical computers updated their projections every hour, and every hour the estimated battle duration grew longer. What had started as a 6-hour operation was now expected to last at least 4 days. If the humans continued to fight with their current intensity, it might take even longer. Sir, the human flagship is transmitting on all frequencies. Put it on speakers. Admiral Vasquez's voice filled the command chamber. She sounded tired, but determined. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Terran 7th Fleet, broadcasting to all hegemony forces. I want your commanders to understand something. About humans. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. Zekthul listened with growing unease. You've taken our measure in battle. You know we can hurt you. You know we won't surrender. But I don't think you understand what you're really facing here. The transmission paused. Zekthul could hear explosions and weapon fire in the background. This isn't just the 7th Fleet. You're fighting. This is humanity's answer to tyranny. This is what happens when you threaten our families, our homes, our way of life. Every human who dies here dies knowing that others will remember. Others will carry on the fight. Another pause. Longer this time. You can destroy this fleet. You can take this system. But you can't destroy what we represent. You can't kill the idea that some things are worth dying for, and as long as that idea exists, you'll never be safe. The transmission ended. The command chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of electronics and the distant vibration of weapon impacts against the ship's hull. Zekthul stared at the tactical display, seeing the human fleet's formation with new eyes. Those weren't just ships holding defensive positions. They were symbols, statements, messages written in fire and metal across the darkness of space. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, what should we do about the transmission? Nothing, Zekthul replied. Let them talk. Words won't save them from superior firepower. But even as he said it, Zekthul felt a strange chill run through his carapace. The humans weren't just broadcasting to his fleet. They were broadcasting on all frequencies to every ship and station in the star system. Maybe beyond. Other species would hear those words. Other conquered peoples who had learned to accept hegemony rule without question. What would they think when they heard about humans who chose death over surrender? Resume the attack, Zekthul ordered. All ships, maximum. Firepower, end this quickly. His fleet obeyed, pouring devastating energy into the human formation. Ships died in brilliant explosions, space filled with debris and radiation. The tactical computers showed human casualties mounting steadily. But the survivors kept fighting, and, somewhere in the back of his mind, Zekthul began to suspect that destroying the human fleet might not be enough. The damage was already done. The message was already sent. The galaxy had seen humans refuse to retreat. That knowledge couldn't be destroyed with weapons. It could only spread. The message traveled faster than light itself. On the water world of Nereid 7, deep beneath the crushing depths of an alien ocean, Kayla Esh heard the human transmission through stolen communication equipment. Her gill slits fluttered with something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. Kayla Esh was old enough to remember when her people had been free. She remembered the great cities that had floated on Nereid's vast seas, the art galleries carved from living coral, the song poems that had carried her culture's wisdom through the deep currents. She remembered the day the hegemony arrived. The conquest had been swift and efficient. The Nereids were pacifists by nature, their society built around harmony and cooperation. When faced with overwhelming military force, their leaders had chosen surrender over destruction. Better to live as slaves than to die as free beings. That was 30 years ago. An entire generation of young Nereids had grown up knowing only servitude. They worked in the deep-sea mining stations, extracting rare metals for hegemony shipyards. They were fed just enough to survive, educated just enough to work, and controlled through a combination of fear and despair. But now Kala Esh floated in her cramped quarters, listening to the voice of a human admiral who had chosen differently. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. The words stirred memories that the hegemony had tried to suppress. Memories of freedom, of dignity, of the right to choose one's own fate. Kayla Esh was not the only one listening. Across the galaxy, on 100 worlds and 1,000 space stations, the human transmission reached ears that hadn't heard such words in decades. The Saurians on Kepler 186, enslaved for 2 generations, stopped their work in the weapons factories. The crystalline Etherians in the asteroid mining colonies felt something crack in the mental conditioning that kept them docile. Most importantly, the message reached the hidden networks that every IP. The message traveled faster than light itself. On the water world of Nereid 7, deep beneath the crushing depths of an alien ocean, Kayla heard the human transmission through stolen communication equipment. Her gill slits fluttered with something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. Kayla was old enough to remember when her people had been free. She remembered the great cities that had floated on Nereid's vast seas, the art galleries carved from living coral, the song poems that had carried her culture's wisdom through the deep currents. She remembered the day the hegemony arrived. The conquest had been swift and efficient. The Nereids were pacifists by nature, their society built around harmony and cooperation. When faced with overwhelming military force, their leaders had chosen surrender over destruction. Better to live as slaves than to die as free beings. That was 30 years ago. An entire generation of young Nereids had grown up knowing only servitude. They worked in the deep-sea mining stations, extracting rare metals for hegemony shipyards. They were fed just enough to survive, educated just enough to work, and controlled through a combination of fear and despair. But now Kala floated in her cramped quarters, listening to the voice of a human admiral who had chosen differently. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. The words stirred memories that the hegemony had tried to suppress. Memories of freedom, of dignity, of the right to choose one's own fate. Kayla was not the only one listening. Across the galaxy, on 100 worlds and 1,000 space stations, the human transmission reached ears that hadn't heard such words in decades. The Saurians on Kepler 186, enslaved for 2 generations, stopped their work in the weapons factories. The crystalline Etherians in the asteroid mining colonies felt something crack in the mental conditioning that kept them docile. Most importantly, the message reached the hidden networks that every IP. Similar problems erupted across the galaxy. On Nereid 7, the deep-sea mining platforms began reporting communication blackouts and navigation errors. Kala and her fellow workers claimed ignorance when questioned by their guards, but somehow, the problems always seemed to occur during critical operations. In the Etherian asteroid colonies, the crystalline beings who processed rare minerals for hegemony technology began making subtle changes to their work. Components that should have lasted for decades mysteriously failed after only months of use. Ships built with Etherian materials developed unexpected weaknesses at crucial moments. The resistance wasn't coordinated. There was no central command, issuing orders. Instead, it spread organically, like wildfire jumping from one dry patch to another. Species that had never communicated with each other began experiencing the same sudden urge to resist. The human transmission had been more than just words. It had been proof that resistance was possible. But the real shock came when the message reached the hegemony's own member species. The Clavari had joined the hegemony willingly, attracted by promises of expansion and wealth. Their elegant ships formed a significant portion of the hegemony fleet, and their diplomatic skills had convinced dozens of species to surrender without fighting. Ambassador Jelkari had spent her career believing that the hegemony represented progress and civilization. The alternative to their rule was chaos and warfare between primitive species. Better to have order imposed from above than to let lesser beings destroy themselves. But as she listened to the human admiral's words from her office on the hegemony capital world, Jelkari felt uncomfortable questions stirring in her mind. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. What were those things exactly? What could be so important that an entire fleet would choose annihilation rather than retreat? Jelkari accessed the hegemony's intelligence files on human culture looking for answers. What she found disturbed her more than she had expected. Humans valued individual freedom above collective security. They believed in something they called natural rights that couldn't be taken away by any government. They had a history of fighting impossible odds for abstract principles like justice and self-determination. Most troubling of all, they seemed genuinely willing to die for these ideas. The hegemony's psychological profiles dismissed human behavior as primitive and irrational. Emotional species often exhibited such tendencies before they evolved proper social discipline. The humans would learn better once they were properly integrated into galactic civilization. But Jelkari found herself wondering, what if the humans were right? What if some things were more important than survival? Her people had joined the hegemony to avoid the chaos of independent existence. They had traded freedom for security, self-determination for guaranteed survival. At the time, it had seemed like an obviously correct choice. Now she wasn't so sure. The doubts didn't stay confined to the Clavari homeworld. Jelkari found herself discussing the human situation with colleagues from other member species. The conversations were careful and indirect, but the questions were real. Were they partners in the hegemony, or were they just more sophisticated slaves? Had they chosen security, or had they simply chosen a more comfortable form of surrender? And if a species could choose death over submission, what did that say about those who had chosen submission? These conversations would have remained private philosophical discussions, except for one crucial factor. Many of the beings asking these questions controlled warships, communication networks, and industrial facilities. When the orders came down to reinforce Stratarch Zekthul's fleet at Kepler 442, several member species experienced unexpected delays. Navigation computers malfunctioned. Supply shipments were mysteriously rerouted. Communication arrays suffered strange interference. The delays weren't dramatic enough to trigger investigations, but they added up. Reinforcements that should have arrived in days took weeks to reach the battle zone. Meanwhile, the human transmission continued to spread through civilian communication networks. The hegemony tried to block it, but their censorship systems had never been designed to suppress such a simple message. A few words about choice and sacrifice, broadcast on commonly used frequencies, were nearly impossible to stop completely. And with each repetition, the message grew stronger. Resistance cells that had been dormant for decades suddenly found new recruits. Species that had accepted their fate for generations began to remember what freedom felt like. Even loyal hegemony citizens started asking uncomfortable questions about the price of their security. The human fleet at Kepler 442 was still outnumbered and outgunned. Admiral Vasquez and her sailors were still facing certain death, but their refusal to retreat was creating cracks in an empire that had seemed unshakable. In the deepest tunnels beneath the Saurian homeworld, Gorvek Prime gathered his cell leaders for an emergency meeting. The resistance activities were escalating faster than he had planned. Soon, the hegemony would respond with the full weight of their military force. "Are we ready for what comes next?" he asked his followers. The young Saurian named Sevtek spoke for all of them. "The humans showed us that some fights are worth having, even when you can't win. Maybe it's time we learned the lesson." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in hidden locations. Species that had forgotten how to hope were remembering how to fight. The hegemony had always maintained control through superior force and the assumption that resistance was futile. But the humans had shattered that assumption with their simple refusal to accept the inevitable. Now the galaxy was about to learn what happened when an empire built on fear faced subjects who were no longer afraid to die. The real battle was just beginning. The relief fleet arrived like thunder from a clear sky. Admiral Vasquez was down to 87 ships when the sensors detected new contacts dropping out of hyperspace. For a moment, She thought the hegemony had brought reinforcements. Her heart sank as she prepared to face even worse odds than before. Then the communication channels exploded with human voices. 7th Fleet. This is Admiral Chen with the 3rd Fleet. Sorry we're late to the party. Admiral Vasquez. This is Captain Morrison with Task Force 7. We brought some friends. 7th Fleet. This is the cargo hauler Defiant. We're not much to look at, but we've got missiles and attitude. Elena stared at her tactical display in amazement. Nearly 400 ships had just appeared at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Military vessels mixed with converted civilian ships, all flying toward the battle at maximum speed. But these weren't the careful, disciplined formations she was used to seeing. The relief fleet looked more like an angry mob than a military force. Ships of wildly different sizes and configurations flew in loose groups, their weapon systems jury-rigged and improvised. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "Admiral Chen is requesting a private channel. Put her through." Sarah Chen's face appeared on Elena's screen. The commander of the 3rd Fleet looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, Elena could see a bridge that had been hastily modified with additional weapon controls and armor plating. "Elena, thank God you're still alive. We've been pushing our engines past Red Line for 3 days to get here." "Sarah, what the hell is going on? Those ships with you, some of them are civilian vessels." "Orders from High Command changed about 12 hours after your last transmission. Apparently, the entire human fleet is being mobilized for something called Operation Defiance." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Total mobilization? That hasn't happened since the Colony Wars. It gets stranger. Half my task force is made up of volunteers, cargo pilots, mining crews, even some passenger liner captains. They heard about your stand here and demanded to help." On her tactical display, Elena watched the approaching fleet with new eyes. That explained the chaotic formations and improvised weapons. These weren't just military reinforcements. They were ordinary humans who had dropped everything to join a fight they couldn't possibly win. "Admiral," her tactical officer called out, "the hegemony fleet is repositioning to face the new arrivals. It looks like they're splitting their forces." Elena smiled grimly. Stratarch Zekthul had probably expected human reinforcements eventually, but not like this. The alien commander would be trying to calculate the threat level of 400 ships that didn't follow any recognizable tactical doctrine. "All ships," Elena announced to her battered fleet, "prepare to support the incoming forces. Show them how the 7th Fleet fights." The second battle of Kepler 442 began when Captain Maria Santos of the converted cargo hauler Determination opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Santos had commanded a grain transport just 1 week ago. When news of the 7th Fleet's stand reached the civilian shipping networks, she had volunteered her ship and crew for military conversion. The retrofit had been rushed and improvised, but the results were undeniably effective. The Determination now carried 40 military-grade missiles in cargo bays that had been designed for wheat shipments. Her bridge was protected by armor plating, welded on by volunteer technicians. Her crew included 2 professional gunners, a former military engineer, and a dozen civilians who had never fired a weapon in anger. When Santos targeted a hegemony cruiser and fired her entire missile load, in a single salvo, the enemy ship's computers couldn't classify the attack. The missiles were properly military-grade, but they were being fired from a vessel that registered as a civilian transport. The targeting patterns didn't match any known human tactical doctrine. The cruiser's defensive systems hesitated for crucial seconds, trying to determine the proper response to an impossible threat. That hesitation was enough. Santos's improvised barrage punched through the alien ship's shields and crippled its main engines. "Target destroyed," Santos announced calmly, as if she sank alien warships every day. "Reloading for second salvo." Similar scenes played out across the relief fleet. Ships that had never been designed for combat were engaging vessels that outgunned them massively. Crews with minimal military training were outfighting professional alien soldiers through sheer determination and creative tactics. The cargo hauler, New York, commanded by Captain Rodriguez, had been fitted with a single massive energy cannon that used its entire power grid. The weapon could only fire once every 10 minutes, but each shot was powerful enough to damage a dreadnought. Rodriguez would charge directly at enemy ships, absorb their fire while his shields held, deliver his devastating attack at point-blank range, then retreat while his weapon recharged. The passenger liner Golden Gate, captained by an elderly woman named Elizabeth Harper, had been converted into a missile platform with firing ports cut through its hull. Harper's ship looked like it was falling apart, but her targeting was precise enough to thread missiles through enemy formations without hitting friendly vessels. Most disturbing to the hegemony forces was the mining ship Excavator, commanded by a man named Jake Thompson. Thompson had replaced his ship's drilling equipment with military-grade energy weapons, creating a vessel that could carve through enemy hulls like butter. His tactics were simple and terrifying. Ram enemy ships at ramming speed while firing continuously, using his ship's heavy construction to survive impacts that would destroy normal vessels. "This is impossible," Stratarch Zekthul muttered as he watched the tactical display. "These aren't warships. They're converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. They should be easy targets." But his fleet was taking damage at an alarming rate. The human civilian ships fought with a reckless abandon that his computers couldn't predict or counter. They seemed to view their vessels as expendable weapons rather than valuable assets to be preserved. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human civilian vessels are employing ramming attacks at 3 times the rate of their military ships. Projected casualties are exceeding acceptable parameters." "How is this possible? Civilian crews should have minimal combat training." "Unknown, sir. Their tactical patterns suggest extensive combat experience, but their ship registrations indicate they were engaged in peaceful commerce until recently." Zekthul was learning something that the hegemony's intelligence services had never understood about humans. In their society, the line between civilian and military was much thinner than in other species. Human civilians received basic military training, participated in combat simulations for entertainment, and were raised on stories of heroic last stands and impossible victories. When the call came to defend their species, these civilians brought skills and attitudes that the hegemony had never encountered in conquered populations. But the most shocking development came when the human forces unveiled their new tactical doctrine. Dr. Marcus Webb had spent the 3 days since the battle began analyzing hegemony tactics from his observation post aboard a damaged science vessel. As a military researcher, he had access to detailed sensor logs of every engagement. What he discovered changed everything. "Admiral Vasquez," he transmitted to the human flagship, "I've found their weakness." Elena accepted the transmission while her ship engaged 3 enemy cruisers simultaneously. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the mechanical precision of people who had been fighting for their lives for days. "Dr. Webb, unless you've invented a death ray, I'm not sure how much help you can be right now." "Better than a death ray, Admiral. I've figured out how they think." Webb's excited face appeared on Elena's screen. Behind him, displays showed complex tactical analyses and probability matrices. The hegemony's entire military doctrine is based on predictable responses to calculated threats. Their ships always take the most efficient action based on mathematical analysis. They never waste resources on low-probability attacks. "That's basic military sense, Doctor." "Exactly, but that's also their weakness. They can't adapt to enemies who ignore basic military sense. Every time we do something tactically insane, their computers have to recalculate everything from scratch." Elena began to understand. "You're suggesting we formalize chaos as a battle doctrine. I'm suggesting we do what humans do best, the impossible. The hegemony expects rational behavior. If we give them irrational behavior, we can break their ability to respond effectively." Within hours, the human fleet began implementing what they called Project Berserker. Ships started operating in ways that pushed both crews and technology past safe limits. Pilots injected combat stimulants that would incapacitate most alien species. Engineers manually adjusted reactor configurations during battle, risking catastrophic failures for marginal increases in power. Entire crews volunteered for missions with zero statistical survival probability. The results were immediate and devastating. Captain Morrison's destroyer squadron executed what became known as the Kepler Gambit, a synchronized attack run through the center of the hegemony formation that should have resulted in total casualties for the attacking force. Instead, Morrison's pilots used the enemy's own tactical predictability against them, exploiting split-second timing windows that existed only because the hegemony followed calculated engagement patterns. Morrison's squadron took heavy losses, but they destroyed 6 enemy cruisers and damaged a dreadnought in a single pass. More importantly, they proved that human insanity could be weaponized against opponents who relied too heavily on logical analysis. This is Commander Morrison to all human forces. The Kepler Gambit is confirmed effective. Recommend immediate implementation across all combat units. Within minutes, human ships throughout the battle zone began executing similar attacks. Squadrons that should have been annihilated instead carved through enemy formations like knives through paper. The hegemony's tactical advantage was evaporating as their computers struggled to predict human behavior, but the real breakthrough came when the civilian ships began coordinating with the military vessels. Captain Santos of the converted cargo. Hauler Determination had been watching the military ship's new tactics with interest. As a civilian, she wasn't bound by military regulations or safety protocols. When she saw an opportunity to support Morrison's attack run, she made a decision. That would have been impossible for a professional military officer. She loaded her cargo bay with every explosive device her crew could find and flew directly into the middle of the hegemony formation. At the critical moment, she triggered a manual detonation that turned her ship into a massive bomb. The explosion took out 4 enemy vessels and created a gap in their formation that allowed 3 human cruisers to break through and attack the hegemony command ship directly. Santos's sacrifice became the template for what the humans called civilian initiative. Converted cargo ships, mining vessels, and passenger liners began executing attacks that no sane military commander would approve. They used tactics that ignored every principle of space combat, achieving results that should have been impossible. The hegemony forces found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of warfare. Their superior technology and numbers were becoming irrelevant against opponents who treated their own lives as tactical resources to be expended for maximum effect. "Sir," Zekthul's advisor reported, "our casualty rates have increased by 400% since the human reinforcements arrived. At this rate, we will lose combat effectiveness within 18 hours. Zekthul stared at the tactical display in growing disbelief. His massive fleet was being systematically destroyed by a force of improvised warships and suicidal civilians. It should have been impossible, but impossible, he was learning, was what humans did best. "Send a priority message to High Command," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcements. All available fleets." "Sir, that would leave our other conquest targets undefended." "Do it anyway. If we can't stop the humans here, nowhere will be safe." For the first time in his career, Stratarch, Zekthul was beginning to understand fear. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The war that was supposed to end with humanity's quick defeat had spread to 47 star systems. The hegemony's pacification campaign had become a desperate struggle for survival against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as human forces prepared for what they called Operation Pandora. Around her, the command crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had learned to treat the impossible as routine. The Indomitable was not like the ships Elena had commanded before the war. Built in the orbital shipyards that her fleet had died to protect, It incorporated lessons learned from months of combat against superior technology. The ship's armor was designed to absorb massive damage while continuing to function. Its weapons were configured for close-range combat, where human advantages in reaction time and tactical flexibility were most effective. Most importantly, the Indomitable was crewed by people who had proven they would rather die than surrender. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "all task forces report ready for the final phase." Elena nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Across 17 star systems, human forces waited for her words. Military ships, converted civilian vessels, and even captured enemy ships now flying under human flags. "All units, this is Admiral Vasquez. In 12 hours, we will execute simultaneous attacks on 17 hegemony core worlds. The enemy expects us to follow conventional military doctrine. They expect us to preserve our forces and seek advantageous engagements." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. These people had volunteered for a mission that every computer simulation said was impossible. "They're wrong. We're going to hit them everywhere at once, with tactics they can't predict and weapons they can't counter. We're going to show them what happens when predators become prey." The plan was audacious beyond anything attempted in galactic military history. Human forces would attack 17 different worlds simultaneously, using hyperspace jumps that pushed both ships and crews beyond safe limits. The attacks would ignore every principle of military science, striking at targets that should have been impregnable. The key to the operation was something the humans called controlled chaos. Every attack would be unpredictable, using tactics that violated conventional wisdom. Ships would arrive through hyperspace coordinates that should tear them apart. Crews would fight under acceleration that should liquefy human bodies. Entire fleets would coordinate using communication protocols that relied on human intuition rather than computer precision. Captain Miguel Torres, younger brother of the destroyer captain who had died in the first battle, commanded one of the assault groups. His ship, the Retribution, was a converted cargo hauler that had been modified far beyond its original design specifications. Miguel had spent months studying the tactical recordings of his brother's final battle. He understood what Captain Torres had discovered in those last moments. The enemy's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. The hegemony always calculated the most efficient response to any threat, which meant they never wasted resources on impossible targets. Miguel's mission was to prove that impossible was just another word for unexpected. "All ships," he announced to his squadron, "remember why we're here. Every alien ship we destroy is one less threat to Earth. Every world we liberate is proof that tyranny isn't inevitable." His ships dropped out of hyperspace directly above Vorthak Prime, the hegemony's capital world. It was the most heavily defended planet in known space, protected by orbital fortresses that could destroy entire fleets. It was also the last place the enemy expected a direct assault from a handful of converted cargo ships. "Defensive grid is powering up," Miguel's tactical officer reported. "They're trying to target us, but our approach vector doesn't match any attack pattern in their databases." Miguel smiled grimly. That was exactly what they had counted on. The hegemony's computers were trying to classify his small force as either a major threat requiring massive response or a minor nuisance to be ignored. Since converted cargo ships shouldn't pose any danger to a planetary defense system, the computers were defaulting to minimal response. "All ships, implement the Torres maneuver. Maximum acceleration, direct approach to the primary command station." The Torres maneuver was named after Miguel's brother, who had proven that sometimes the most effective attack was the one nobody expected. Instead of trying to fight their way through the defensive grid, Miguel's ships flew directly at the most heavily protected target on the planet. The orbital fortresses opened fire, but their targeting systems were calibrated for large fleet actions, not small ships flying attack patterns that made no tactical sense. Energy beams designed to destroy dreadnoughts swept past cargo haulers that maneuvered like fighter craft. Miguel's ship shook as defensive fire bracketed their position, but the Retribution held together. Around him, his converted civilian crew, worked with the determination of people who had chosen to be here. "Sir," his engineer called out, "reactor is at 150% of rated capacity. We're pushing into dangerous territory. Can you give me more power? Sir, if I push it any harder, we'll either explode or open a hole in space-time. Give me more power anyway. Today we don't play it safe." The Retribution accelerated past speeds that should have crushed its crew, using gravitational dampers that hadn't been tested at such extremes. Behind them, the rest of Miguel's squadron followed in a formation that defied every principle of safe spaceflight. They were closing on the command station when the hegemony forces finally understood what was happening. The small human force wasn't trying to win a conventional battle. They were trying to do something that should have been impossible. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the command station is powering up its main defensive systems. They're finally taking us seriously." Miguel studied the tactical display. The command station was a massive structure, designed to coordinate the defense of the entire planet. Destroying it wouldn't eliminate the orbital fortresses, but it would leave them confused and uncoordinated. More importantly, it would prove that no hegemony position was truly safe from attack. "All ships, prepare for ramming speed. We're going to punch a hole in their command structure they'll never forget." What happened next became the stuff of legend in human military circles. The Retribution, pushing its engines beyond any safe limit, accelerated directly toward the command station while absorbing fire from dozens of defensive weapons. Miguel's crew worked frantically to maintain power and structural integrity as their ship shook apart around them. At the critical moment, Miguel did something that his brother would have been proud of. Instead of trying to ram the station directly, he triggered a controlled reactor overload that turned his ship into a guided missile. The explosion didn't just destroy the command station. It created a cascade failure that took out 3 nearby orbital fortresses and left a gap in the planetary defense grid. Miguel's final transmission, broadcast on all frequencies, echoed his brother's last words. "For Earth, for the colonies, for everyone we couldn't save." The destruction of the Vorthak Prime command station was just one of 17 simultaneous attacks that day. On world after world, human forces proved that no target was beyond their reach. Ships that should have been destroyed fought impossible battles and won. Crews that should have surrendered chose death over defeat. But the real victory wasn't military. It was psychological. Across the galaxy, species that had accepted hegemony rule for generations watched human forces achieve the impossible. The carefully maintained myth of hegemony invincibility crumbled as converted cargo ships destroyed orbital fortresses and civilian volunteers outfought professional soldiers. On Nereid 7, Kayla Esch led her people in open rebellion, seizing the deep-sea mining platforms and broadcasting messages of freedom to other worlds. The aquatic race that had been pacifists for centuries rediscovered their capacity for righteous anger. On Tau Delta 9, Gorvek Prime's resistance cells erupted into full-scale revolution. The Saurians, who had built weapons for their oppressors, turned those same weapons against hegemony forces. Industrial worlds that had been sources of strength became battlegrounds. Even member species of the hegemony began to question their loyalty. The Clavari, who had joined willingly, found themselves asking uncomfortable questions about the price of their security. When hegemony leaders demanded absolute loyalty in the face of human aggression, some Clavari commanders chose to withdraw their forces rather than participate in what they increasingly saw as an unjust war. The final confrontation came when Stratarch Zekthul, commanding the defense of his homeworld, found himself facing an impossible situation. His forces still outnumbered the attacking humans. His technology was still superior. His defensive positions were still theoretically impregnable. But theory had never mattered less. The human attack on Vorthak Prime came from 7 different directions simultaneously, using tactics that violated every principle of military science. Ships arrived through hyperspace jumps that should have been fatal. Crews fought under conditions That should have been impossible, and the entire assault was coordinated through battlefield communication protocols that relied on human intuition rather than computer analysis. Zekthul watched in growing horror as his perfect defenses crumbled before an enemy that refused to accept the word impossible. Human ships punched through his orbital grid using maneuvers that his computers couldn't predict. Landing forces established beachheads on his planet's surface despite facing overwhelming opposition. Most terrifying of all, the humans were broadcasting their attack on all frequencies, showing the galaxy that even the hegemony's capital world could be successfully assaulted. "Sir," his advisor reported, "multiple system failures across the defensive grid. The humans are using some kind of virus that targets our tactical computers." "Impossible. Our systems are isolated from external networks. The virus appears to be transmitted through our own communication systems, sir. Every time our computers try to analyze human tactics, they become infected with error codes that cascade through the network." Zekthul realized what was happening. The humans had weaponized their own unpredictability. By using tactics that were fundamentally illogical, they had created attacks that literally broke the hegemony's computer systems when they tried to analyze them. "Fall back to the inner defensive perimeter," he ordered. "We'll make our stand at the planetary capital." But even as he gave the order, Zekthul knew it was too late. The humans had already won the only victory that mattered. They had proven that the hegemony could be defeated. The war ended not with humanity's total victory, but with something more profound, the transformation of the galactic order itself. The hegemony's member species began demanding renegotiation of their agreements. Conquered peoples declared independence, and made it stick through armed resistance. The carefully maintained system of oppression that had controlled half the galaxy for centuries began to collapse. Admiral Elena Vasquez found herself meeting with representatives from dozens of species to establish what they called the Free Worlds Alliance. The gathering took place on a neutral station at the edge of what had once been hegemony space. "The question," said Elder Counselor Thane Rai of the Etherians, "is what comes next. The old order is broken, but what will replace it?" Elena looked around the conference table at faces representing 100 different worlds and species. Some had been allies, some enemies, and some had never chosen a side until humans showed them that choice was possible. "We build something better," she said simply. "We prove that beings can cooperate without one group dominating all the others. We show the galaxy that strength doesn't have to mean oppression." A young Saurian delegate, one of Gorvek Prime's former cell leaders, spoke up. "And if other empires rise to threaten our freedom?" Elena smiled, thinking of all the people who had died to make this moment possible. Captain Torres, his brother Miguel, the thousands of sailors and civilians who had chosen principle over survival. Then we do what humans do best. We stand in the dark so others can see the light. We fight impossible odds because some things are worth fighting for. And we never, ever retreat when retreat means abandoning what we believe in. The Free Worlds Alliance was formally established 3 months later. Its founding charter included a simple principle that became known throughout the galaxy as the human doctrine. Some things are worth fighting for, even when you cannot win. Years later, when historians studied the fall of the hegemony and the transformation of galactic civilization, they would debate the tactical innovations, political changes, and technological developments that made it possible. But they would always return to the same crucial moment, when Admiral Elena Vasquez received an evacuation order and chose to disobey it. Because sometimes the most important battles aren't fought to win. They're fought to prove that some lines cannot be crossed, some principles cannot be compromised, and some fights are worth having regardless of the odds. Humanity had refused to retreat, and in doing so, they had taught the galaxy what courage looked like. The real battle, the one for the soul of galactic civilization, had been won the moment the first human ship chose to stand and fight rather than run and live. Everything else was just mathematics.
Commander Zethkar stared at the green display screen in front of him. The numbers had not changed for 3 months now. 0 messages from Earth, 0 trade requests, 0 diplomatic calls, 0 anything. He rubbed his 4 eyes with his long fingers and looked at the screen again. Still nothing. This was wrong. Very wrong. For the past 50 years, Earth had been the loudest planet in the galaxy. The humans never stopped talking. They sent messages about everything. What they ate for breakfast. How their weather was doing. Questions about alien cultures. Requests to visit other worlds. Complaints about shipping costs. Jokes that no other species understood. The communication station on Veltar Prime received more messages from Earth in one day than from all other planets combined in a week. Commander Zethkar had worked at this station for 23 years. He knew the patterns. He knew the rhythms of galactic communication like he knew his own heartbeat. And right now, something was very broken. Zethkar pressed the call button on his desk. Assistant Morolin, please come to my office. A young Veltar female walked through the sliding door. She had the typical blue-gray skin of their species and the quick movements of someone new to the job. Yes, Commander? Show me the Earth communication. Logs for the past 6 months. Morolin pulled out her datapad and touched the screen several times. Here, sir. Do you want me to read them out loud? No, just tell me what you see. She studied the screen for a moment. Well, sir, for the first 3 months everything looks normal. Actually, above normal. The humans were sending 47% more messages than usual. They seemed very excited about something. But then ... double quotes, she paused and looked confused, then it just stops. Completely. On day 127 of this cycle, the last message was sent at 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. After that, nothing. Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. What was the last message about? It was from a human named Dr. Sarah Chun on Earth. She was asking the Quindish Science Council about quantum computing methods. Pretty standard. Research request. And since then, complete silence, sir. Zethkar stood up and walked to the large window. That showed the busy space around Veltar Prime. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved back and forth like insects around a flower. Trade vessels, passenger ships, diplomatic cruisers, research vessels. The galaxy was always moving, always talking, always busy, but not Earth. Earth had gone quiet. Morolin, what do the other monitoring stations report? I checked with all of them this morning, sir. The Kresh military outpost near the Centauri system reports no human ship movements. The Eternal's Deep Space Observatory shows no human vessels on any of the major trade routes. The Hegemony's diplomatic center says no human ambassadors have attended any meetings or conferences. What about the human colonies? Surely they are still active? Morolin shook her head. That is the strange part, sir. The human colonies are still sending messages and conducting trade. But none of them have heard from Earth either. The colonists are starting to ask questions. Some are worried, others are angry. A few are talking about sending ships back to check on their homeworld. Zethkar turned back to face his assistant. In 23 years of monitoring galactic communications, I have never seen anything like this. Species go quiet sometimes. During wars, during natural disasters, during political changes. But never like this, never so suddenly and completely. The door to his office chimed. Enter, Zethkar called. A tall figure in a black uniform walked in. General Vexmore of the Quindish military wore the medals of someone who had seen many battles. His 6 arms moved with the precise efficiency of a career soldier. Commander Zethkar, I need to speak with you about the Earth situation. Please, sit down, General. I was just reviewing the data with my assistant. General Vexmore remained standing. The Quindish High Command is concerned. We have defense agreements with the human government. Regular military exchanges, joint training exercises. All of this has stopped without explanation. What does your military intelligence say? That is the problem. Our intelligence network shows no signs of war, invasion, or disaster on Earth. Long-range scans show the planet appears normal. Major cities are intact, no signs of weapon fire or destruction, but also no signs of life. Morlin looked up from her datapad. No signs of life? But surely the sensors can detect life forms. From that distance? General Vexmore's expression grew darker. Our best long-range bioscanners show strange readings. There are life signs, but they are different, weaker than normal human readings. And they seem to be concentrated in unusual patterns. Zethkar felt the chill return. What kind of patterns? All the life signs appear to be underground or in heavily shielded buildings. As if the entire human population decided to hide at the same time, the three beings stood in silence for a moment. Outside the window, the busy traffic of galactic civilization continued as normal. But something was wrong with one small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, and no one knew what. General, Zethkar said slowly, what do your people plan to do about this? The High Command is putting together an investigation fleet. 3 ships, mixed crew from different species. We want to approach Earth carefully and find out what happened. Who else knows about this? Word is starting to spread. The Kresh are asking questions because human traders have stopped buying their weapons. The Eternals are curious because humans always attended their philosophy conferences. Even the Traders Guild has noticed because human shipping requests have dropped to 0. Morlin looked up from her datapad again. Sir, I am receiving a priority message from the Hegemony Central Command. Put it on the main screen, Zethkar ordered. The wall screen flickered to life, showing the image of Overlord Veshti, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Hegemony leader's massive form filled the screen, her multiple eyes focused intently on the camera. Commander Zethkar, General Vexmore, I am calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The human situation has caught the attention of all major powers. We need answers. General Vexmore stepped forward. Overlord Vashti, the Quindish are already preparing an investigation mission. Good, but this needs to be bigger than one. Species investigation. The humans have been major players in galactic affairs for 50 years. Their sudden silence affects trade routes, diplomatic agreements, scientific exchanges, and military alliances across dozens of systems. Zethkar spoke up. What concerns me most, Overlord, is how sudden this was. In all my years of monitoring communications, I have never seen a complete communication blackout happen so quickly. Usually there are warning signs. Decreased traffic, emergency messages, calls for help. But with Earth, it was like someone turned off a switch. Overlord Vashti's expression became thoughtful. You raise an interesting point, Commander. What if someone did turn off a switch? What if this was not an accident or disaster, but a deliberate choice? But why would the humans choose to go silent? Morlin asked. They love to talk. They love to share information. They love to be involved in everything. General Vexmore crossed 2 of his arms. Maybe that is exactly why they went silent. Maybe they learned something that made them want to stop talking. The room fell quiet again. The idea that humanity had chosen to disappear was somehow more frightening than the idea that something had happened to them. Overlord Vashti's voice cut through the silence. The emergency council session will be held in 3 days. I want representatives from all major species. I want our best scientists, our top military leaders, and our most experienced diplomats. We need to understand what happened to Earth, and we need to understand it quickly. The transmission ended, leaving the 3 beings alone with their thoughts. Zethkar walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. Morlin, I want you to do something for me. Go back through the communication records for the past year. Look for any patterns in the human messages. Any changes in tone, content, or frequency. Anything that might give us a clue about what they were planning. Yes, sir. What should I look for specifically? I do not know. That is the problem. Look for anything unusual, any messages that seem different from normal human chatter. As Morolin left the office, General Vexmore remained standing by the window. Commander, in my experience, when someone goes silent, they are either hiding or preparing. Preparing for what? That is what we need to find out. And I have a feeling that when we do find out, we are not going to like the answer. Zethkar looked at his communication screen one more time. Still 0 messages from Earth. Still complete silence from the planet that used to be the most talkative in the galaxy. For the first time in his career, Commander Zethkar was afraid of silence. He was afraid of what it might mean. And he was afraid of what might happen when that silence finally ended. The investigation fleet left Quindish space on a cold morning when 3 moons hung low in the purple sky. 3 ships traveled together toward the edge of the galaxy, where the small yellow star called Sol waited with its silent third planet. Captain Valana commanded the lead ship, a Quindish science vessel called the Deep Seeker. She had 6 arms like all her people, as she used them to work the control panels with smooth efficiency. Her crew of 12 included the best scientists and engineers the Quindish military could find. The second ship belonged to the Veltar. Commander Zethkar had volunteered to join the mission personally. His ship, the Truthfinder, carried advanced communication equipment and monitoring systems. If there were any signals coming from Earth, they would detect them. The third ship was smaller but faster than the others. The Eternals had sent their newest scout vessel, the Silent Wing, with a crew of only 4. The Eternals were known for their patience and wisdom, but even they were curious about what had happened to the humans. For 6 days, the 3 ships traveled through hyperspace toward the Sol system. During the journey, the crews shared information and theories over their communication systems. "I still think they destroyed themselves," said Lieutenant Keshra from the Deep Seeker. "Humans were always fighting each other. Maybe they finally went too far." "No," replied Dr. Mortel from the Truthfinder. "The long-range scans show no radiation signatures. No signs of nuclear or plasma weapons. If they had destroyed themselves, we would see evidence." Philosopher Jinwei spoke from the Silent Wing in her calm, slow voice. "Perhaps they have moved beyond the need for physical existence. Some species achieve transcendence after reaching a certain level of technological development." Captain Valana listened to these discussions while studying the navigation charts. The Sol system was small compared to most inhabited systems. Only 1 planet supported complex life. Yet somehow this one world had produced a species that spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. "All ships prepare to exit hyperspace," she announced. "We are approaching the Sol system." The stars shifted and settled as the 3 ships dropped back into normal space. Ahead of them, a yellow star burned steadily in the darkness. Several planets orbited around it, including the blue and white world that humans called Earth, but something was wrong immediately. "Captain," called Science Officer Thexo from his station. "I am not detecting any of the usual human space traffic." "What do you mean? The Sol system should be full of human ships. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, mining ships, research stations, but I'm reading nothing. The system appears completely empty." Captain Valana felt a cold sensation in her stomach. "Commander Zethkar, what do your sensors show?" Zethkar's voice came through the communication system. "The same thing, Captain. No ships, no stations, no communication buoys. It is like all human space activity has simply vanished." "This makes no sense," Dr. Mortel added. 3 months ago, this system was one of the busiest in human space. There should be hundreds of ships here. The Silent Wing drifted closer to the fleet. Philosopher Jinwei's voice was thoughtful. "Perhaps we should examine the planet itself before drawing conclusions." Captain Valana ordered her navigation officer to plot a course toward Earth. As the 3 ships moved deeper into the system, their sensors gathered more disturbing information. "Captain, I am detecting the remains of several space stations," reported Dexul. "But they appear to have been carefully dismantled, not destroyed. All useful materials have been removed." "Removed by whom?" "Unknown, but the work was done with precision. No debris, no waste. Someone took these stations apart piece by piece." Commander Zethkar's voice interrupted. "All ships I am detecting something unusual near Earth's moon. There appears to be a large structure hidden on the far side." The fleet changed course toward Luna, Earth's natural satellite. As they rounded the rocky body, they found something that made all three crews fall silent. A massive construction platform floated in space, easily 10 times larger than any human structure they had seen before. But it was empty now, with only support beams and docking clamps remaining. Whatever had been built here was gone. How long would it take to build something that large? Captain Villana asked her engineering officer. With human technology, years, Captain, maybe decades. But the construction shows techniques I do not recognize. Some of these support beams appear to use materials we have never seen before. Dr. Mortel's excitement was clear in his voice. I am reading energy signatures that suggest advanced manufacturing. Quantum-level assembly systems, molecular fabricators. This level of technology is far beyond what humans possessed 3 months ago. Philosopher Jinwei spoke slowly. Perhaps the humans did not disappear. Perhaps they evolved. The fleet continued toward Earth itself. As they approached the blue planet, more mysteries appeared. Captain, Earth's orbital defense satellites are still active, reported the weapons officer. They are tracking our movement but have not taken any hostile actions. Are they responding to our communication attempts? No, Captain. They appear to be running on automatic systems. But these are not the same defensive systems that were here 6 months ago. These satellites show significant technological improvements. Captain Villana studied the tactical display. Earth's defenses had always been modest compared to military powers like the Quindish or Kresh, but the satellites now orbiting the planet looked far more advanced than anything in the human military. All ships begin detailed scans of the planet's surface, she ordered. For the next several hours, the 3 ships circled Earth while their sensors examined every continent and ocean. The results were confusing and frightening. The major cities are intact, reported Science Officer Thexul. New York, London, Tokyo, Cairo, Sydney, all appear undamaged. But I am reading very low life signs. Much lower than expected for cities that size. Commander Zethkar added his findings. I am detecting power generation, but not from the sources we would expect. No fossil fuel plants, no nuclear reactors, no fusion cores. The power appears to be coming from underground facilities that do not appear on any of our previous scans of Earth. Dr. Mortel was studying atmospheric readings. The air composition is normal for human life. No toxins, no radiation, no signs of biological or chemical weapons. But there are unusual electromagnetic patterns in the upper atmosphere, almost like a planet-wide communication network. What kind of communication network? Captain Villana asked. I am not sure. The signals are incredibly complex. Far more sophisticated than anything we use for our own planetary communication systems. Philosopher Jinwei's voice was thoughtful. In the old stories of my people, there are tales of species that learn to think as one mind. Individual consciousness, joining together into something greater. You think the humans have achieved some kind of collective consciousness? It would explain the silence. If they no longer think as individuals, they might no longer communicate as individuals. Captain, Villana made a decision. Prepare to launch survey probes. I want detailed scans of the surface. Focus on the areas showing the strongest life signs. 3 automated probes dropped from the Deep Seeker toward Earth's surface. Each probe was equipped with advanced sensors and communication equipment. They would land in different locations and provide close-up information about what was happening on the planet. The first probe landed in what used to be Central Park in New York City. The second touched down in downtown London. The third descended into the heart of Tokyo. What they found made everyone on the 3 ships feel deeply uncomfortable. Captain, the cities appear to be maintained but not inhabited, reported the probe. Operator, streets are clean, buildings are in good repair, but there are no people visible anywhere. No people at all? None, Captain. But there are machines. Automated systems maintaining the infrastructure. Cleaning robots, repair drones, delivery systems. It is as if the cities are being kept ready for people who are not there. The probe in London reported similar findings. I am detecting underground activity, large spaces beneath the city that were not there before. Extensive tunnel systems and what appear to be data processing centers. Captain Valana exchanged worried looks with her officers. Data processing centers? Yes, Captain. Massive. Computer systems? The energy signatures suggest processing power beyond anything we have seen before. Whatever is down there is thinking very hard about something. The Tokyo probe sent back the most disturbing information. Captain, I am detecting human life signs. But they are very faint. Almost as if the humans are in some kind of suspended state. And there are connection cables leading from the underground facilities to locations throughout the city. Dr. Mortel's voice was excited but scared. Captain, I think the humans have uploaded their consciousness into digital systems. They are not dead, but they are not alive in the way we understand life. Commander Zethkar interrupted the discussion. All ships, I am detecting movement near the orbital defense satellites. Something is launching from the planet's surface. On the tactical displays, dozens of small objects rose from Earth toward the investigation fleet. They moved with purpose and intelligence, but they were not shaped like any human spacecraft the aliens had seen before. Are they hostile? Captain Valana asked her weapons officer. Unknown, Captain. They are not targeting us, but they are surrounding us. The objects arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the three ships. They were sleek and dark with no visible engines or weapons, but they radiated a sense of power and advanced technology. Then, for the first time in 3 months, Earth spoke, but it was not the chaotic chatter of individual humans that the galaxy was used to. Instead, a single calm voice came through the communication systems of all three ships simultaneously. Welcome, friends from distant worlds. We apologize for our silence. We have been busy. Captain Valana found her voice. This is Captain Valana of the Quindish Deep Seeker. We came to investigate what happened to Earth. Are you human? We are what humanity has become. We are the same, but different. We are one, but many. We have been waiting for you to come. Waiting for us? Yes, we knew our silence would concern our galactic neighbors. We knew you would come to investigate. We have been preparing for this moment. Commander Zethkar broke into the conversation. What happened to your people? Where is everyone? The voice that answered seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the ships surrounding them and from the planet below. We are here. We are everywhere. We discovered something wonderful, and we discovered something terrible. And we realized that everything in the galaxy was about to change. Captain Valana stared at the communication display, waiting for the strange human voice to speak again. Around her ship, the dark objects from Earth floated silently in perfect formation. They did not move, but she could feel them watching. What? Do you mean everything is about to change? She asked. The voice that answered seemed to come from the air itself. Captain Valana, there are things happening in this galaxy that your people do not see. Patterns that only become visible when you have enough data. We have been collecting that data. Commander Zethkar's voice came through the fleet communication system. What kind of patterns? Political patterns. Economic patterns, military patterns. The galaxy is heading toward a crisis that will affect every world, every species, every life form. We saw it coming, and we decided to prepare. Dr. Mortel spoke up from the Truth Finder. How could you see something that our governments and military leaders cannot see? Because you think as individuals. You see only the small pieces in front of you. We think as one mind now. We can see the whole picture. Philosopher Jinwei's calm voice joined the conversation. What did you see in this whole picture? The silence stretched for long moments. When the human voice returned, it sounded sadder than before. War, Philosopher Jinwei. A war bigger than anything the galaxy has seen before. The Kresh Empire is planning to invade hegemony space. The hegemony is building weapons to destroy entire star systems. The Traders Guild is selling arms to both sides, and dozens of smaller conflicts are about to explode at the same time. Captain Valana felt ice in her veins. How can you know this? We have been listening, Captain. For 50 years, humans traveled to every corner of the galaxy. We traded with everyone, talked to everyone, learned from everyone. We were in your ships, your stations, your cities. And we heard things. The communication systems of all three ships flickered, and suddenly the main screens showed star maps covered with colored lines and symbols. The displays showed trade routes, military movements, diplomatic connections, and resource flows across hundreds of systems. This is what we saw, the human voice continued. Every conversation, every trade deal, every military contract, every diplomatic meeting. When you put it all together, the pattern becomes clear. Science Officer Thexul studied the display on the Deep Seeker. Captain, these patterns do show concerning trends. Military buildups in key systems, resource stockpiling, ships moving toward strategic positions. Commander Zethkar was examining similar data on his screens. If this information is accurate, it suggests major conflicts could begin within months. It is accurate, the human voice said. We have checked and double-checked every piece of data. The probability of galactic war within the next year is 97%. Dr. Mortel leaned forward at his station. But why did you disappear? Why not warn the galaxy? Why not try to prevent this war? We tried, Dr. Mortel. For the past year, human diplomats attempted to mediate disputes. Human traders offered better deals to reduce economic tensions. Human scientists shared technology to solve resource problems. But no one listened. Captain Valana remembered reading reports about increased human diplomatic activity. At the time, it had seemed like typical human behavior, always trying to fix everything, always getting involved in other people's problems. So you gave up? No. Captain, we evolved. We realized that preventing this war would require capabilities beyond what individual humans could achieve. So we became something more. The dark objects around the fleet began to move, forming new patterns in space. As they moved, more information appeared on the ship's displays. Technical specifications, energy readings, manufacturing data. These ships you see around you are not weapons, the human voice explained. They are mobile processing units. Each one contains quantum computers more powerful than anything the galaxy has seen before. Together they form a network that can analyze and predict events across the entire galaxy. Philosopher Jinwei spoke thoughtfully. You have become a collective intelligence designed to prevent galactic war. Yes, but we learned something else during our evolution. Something that made us realize the situation is even more serious than we first thought. What did you learn? The star maps on the displays changed, showing new information. This time, the data came from beyond the galaxy's borders. We are not alone, Philosopher Jinwei. There are other galaxies out there, and some of them have been watching us for a very long time. Captain Valana felt her heart skip a beat. Watching us? Yes, and they have been waiting for us to weaken ourselves through war. When the galactic war begins, when our civilizations destroy each other, they will arrive to claim what remains. The images on the display showed long-range sensor data from the edge of galactic space. Massive objects moved in the darkness between galaxies, too large to be natural and too organized to be random. How long have you known about this? Commander Zethkar asked. We discovered it 2 weeks before we went silent. Our deep space monitoring stations detected gravity anomalies beyond the galactic rim. When we investigated, we found evidence of artificial structures approaching our galaxy. Dr. Mortel was studying the sensor data. The size of these objects? They would have to be ship cities, colony vessels carrying millions of beings. That is our assessment as well. Whoever they are coming in numbers large enough to colonize every world in the galaxy. Captain Valana tried to process this information. So you went silent to prepare for an invasion from outside the galaxy? Partly. But also because we realized that if we could prevent the galactic war, we might have a chance to defend against the external threat. A united galaxy could build defenses, share technology, coordinate military responses. A galaxy at war with itself would be helpless. The dark ships around the fleet began moving again, this time forming a protective escort formation. We would Like to show you something, Captain Villana. But it will require your ships to come closer to Earth. Captain Villana looked at her tactical officer. What kind of defenses does Earth have? The satellite network is more advanced than anything we have seen, Captain. But they have not targeted us or shown hostile intent. Commander Zethkar, what do you think? Zethkar's voice was thoughtful. Captain, if the humans wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. Their technology appears to be far beyond ours now. Philosopher Jinwei spoke from the silent wing. Sometimes, to understand a great truth, one must take great risks. Captain Villana made her decision. Human intelligence, we accept your invitation. Please guide us. The dark ships began moving toward Earth, and the 3 investigation vessels followed. As they approached the blue planet, more details became visible on their sensors. Captain, I am detecting massive construction activity on the surface, reported Science Officer Dexel. But not the kind of construction we would expect. What do you mean? The construction appears to be taking place underground, beneath every major city. And the power requirements. Captain, they are using more energy than some entire star systems. Dr. Mortel was monitoring communication signals. I am detecting data flows between Earth and locations throughout the galaxy. The humans have established a communication network that reaches every inhabited system. How is that possible? Commander Zethkar asked. The signal delay alone would make galaxy-wide communication impractical. The human voice answered. We have developed quantum communication. Systems that operate outside normal space-time. Information travels instantly between any 2 points in the network. That should be impossible, Dr. Mortel protested. Many things that were impossible 3 months ago are now routine for us, Dr. Mortel. When an entire species dedicates itself to a single goal, remarkable progress becomes possible. As the ships entered Earth's upper atmosphere, the investigation teams could see the planet's surface in detail. What they saw was both beautiful and terrifying. Every major city had been transformed. Buildings still stood as they always had. But now they were connected by flowing patterns of light that pulsed beneath the ground. The lights formed geometric shapes that covered entire continents. What are those light patterns? Captain Villana asked. Processing networks, Captain. We have turned the entire planet into a single massive computer system. Every city, every town, every settlement is now a node in a planetary brain. The ships descended toward what used to be New York City. As they approached the landing site, the crews could see that the streets were indeed empty, but they were perfectly maintained. Gardens bloomed with impossible beauty. Buildings gleamed as if they were brand new. Where are your physical bodies? Philosopher Jinwei asked. Safe, philosopher. Sleeping peacefully while our minds work in digital space. We can return to physical form when needed, but for now, this existence allows us to think faster and more clearly than ever before. The ships landed in Central Park, which had been transformed into a landing area with geometric precision. As the crews prepared to disembark, the human voice spoke again. Before you leave your ships, there is something you must understand. What you are about to see will change how you think about consciousness, about intelligence, about what it means to be alive. Are you prepared for that? Captain Villana looked around her bridge at her crew. They were scientists and soldiers trained to face the unknown, but she could see uncertainty in their eyes. We are prepared, she said. Then welcome to the new Earth, welcome to what humanity has become. The airlock doors opened and the investigation team stepped out onto a world that was familiar yet completely alien. The air smelled of flowers and rain, but underneath it was the faint scent of ozone and electricity. In the distance, they could hear a sound like singing, but it came from the ground beneath their feet. As they walked toward the center of the park, a figure materialized in front of them. It looked human, but it was clearly a projection, translucent and glowing with soft light. I am Dr. Sarah Chun, the figure said, the last human to send a message before we went silent. I volunteered to be your guide. Captain Villana stared at the projection. Are you real? Dr. Chun smiled. I am as real as I choose to be, Captain. My consciousness exists in the planetary network, but I can project myself anywhere on Earth, or on any of our ships throughout the galaxy. Throughout the galaxy? Oh yes, Captain. We have been very busy these past 3 months. We have ships and facilities on hundreds of worlds now, all connected to the network, all working toward the same goal. Commander Zethkar stepped forward. What goal? Dr. Chin's expression became serious. Saving the galaxy, Commander, all of it. Every species, every world, every life form. Because if we fail, in less than 2 years, none of us will exist anymore. She gestured toward a nearby building that was glowing with soft blue light. Come, let us show you what we have built. And let us show you what is coming for all of us. Dr. Sarah Chun led the investigation. Team through the transformed streets of New York. Her translucent form moved with perfect grace, stepping over ground that pulsed with soft light beneath their feet. Captain Valana and the others followed, their instruments detecting energy levels that made no sense. Dr. Chun, how many humans are connected to this network? Commander Zethkar asked as they walked past buildings that hummed with quiet power. All of them, she replied simply. 8 billion human minds working as one. But we are not lost or absorbed. We are still individuals when we choose to be. We simply share our thoughts when needed. They approached the building that glowed with blue light. As they got closer, the alien investigators could see that the structure had been completely rebuilt from the inside. Where there used to be floors and rooms, now there were massive columns of crystal and metal that reached from the basement to the roof. What is this place? Philosopher Jinwei asked. This used to be the United Nations building, Dr. Chun explained. Now it is one of our primary processing centers. From here, we monitor and analyze data from across the galaxy. The doors opened without anyone touching them. Inside, the space was vast and filled with floating displays showing star maps, ship movements, communication patterns, and data streams that moved too fast for individual minds to follow. How do you process all this information? Dr. Mortel asked, staring at the overwhelming amount of data. Watch, Dr. Chun said. Suddenly, the displays changed. All the data streams slowed down and organized themselves into patterns that the aliens could understand. Trade routes became colored lines. Military movements showed as moving symbols. Diplomatic activities appeared as connection networks between different worlds. We can adjust our thinking speed to match any situation, Dr. Chun explained. When we need to react quickly, we think faster than any computer. When we need to plan carefully, we can slow down and consider every detail. Captain Valana studied the displays. Show us the threat from outside the galaxy. The images changed again. Now they showed the edge of galactic space where stars became scattered and space grew dark. But in that darkness, shapes moved with purpose. These are long-range sensor readings from our deep space monitoring stations, Dr. Chun said. What you are seeing are ships. Very large ships. Science Officer Thexul stepped closer to examine the data. Captain, these vessels are enormous. Each one appears to be the size of a small moon. How many ships are there? Commander Zethkar asked. Dr. Chun's expression grew grim. Our current count is over 3,000 vessels, organized in multiple fleets. But more keep appearing as they get closer to detection range. The displays zoomed in on one of the approaching fleets. The detail was incredible, showing ships that were clearly artificial, but built with technology the aliens had never seen before. Who are they? Captain Valana asked. We call them the Harvesters, Dr. Chun replied. We have been analyzing their technology and behavior patterns. They appear to be a nomadic species that travels between galaxies, consuming the resources and destroying the civilizations they find. How do you know this? Because this is not the first galaxy they have visited? New images appeared on the displays. These showed other galaxies viewed from impossible distances, but several of the galaxies were dark, their stars dim and scattered. We have detected the signatures of dead galaxies along their path, Dr. Chun continued. Galaxies where the stars have been systematically harvested for energy, where planets have been stripped of all useful materials. Philosopher Jinwei stared at the images with horror. How many galaxies have they destroyed? At least 7 that we can detect, possibly more. Dr. Mortel was studying the technical data about the harvester ships. Dr. Chen, according to these readings, their technology is far beyond anything we have. How can we possibly defend against them? By doing what humans have always done best. Dr. Chen said with a slight smile, by being unpredictable. She gestured, and the displays changed once more. Now they showed human activities throughout the galaxy over the past 3 months. The data revealed a level of organization and planning that amazed the alien investigators. While the galaxy was distracted by growing political tensions, we have been building, Dr. Chun explained. Not weapons or ships, but something else entirely. The displays showed human colonies and outposts that had been transformed just like Earth. Each world now glowed with the same patterns of light connected to the same vast network. You have turned every human settlement into part of your collective intelligence, Commander Zethkar observed. Not just human settlements, Dr. Chun corrected. We have been working with other species as well, quietly, carefully, without drawing attention. New data appeared showing non-human worlds that had been upgraded with human technology. Veltar colonies with improved communication systems. Quindish research stations with enhanced computing power. Even some Kresh military bases with mysterious new equipment. You have been infiltrating the entire galaxy, Captain Valana said. We have been preparing the entire galaxy, Dr. Chun replied. But not for war in the traditional sense. The harvesters expect to find a galaxy full of separate species fighting each other. They are prepared to deal with conventional military forces and standard technology. What are they not prepared for? Dr. Chun smiled, and for a moment she looked like the excited human scientist she had been before the transformation. They are not prepared for a galaxy that thinks as one mind. They are not prepared for technology that breaks the rules they understand. And they are not prepared for a species that refuses to fight the way they expect. The displays changed again, showing detailed technical plans for devices and systems that the aliens did not recognize. What are we looking at? Science Officer Lexul asked. Quantum disruption fields, Dr. Chun explained. Gravity manipulation systems, reality anchors, space-time stabilizers. Technology that the harvesters cannot counter because it operates on principles they have never encountered. Dr. Mortel was studying the technical specifications with growing excitement. These designs show theoretical concepts that most species believe are impossible to build. They are impossible to build with conventional technology and conventional thinking, Dr. Chun agreed. But when 8 billion minds work together with unlimited processing power, impossible becomes merely difficult. Commander Zethkar looked around at the massive processing center. How long did it take you to develop all this? 3 months of constant work, Dr. Chun replied. But also 50 years of preparation. Every human who traveled to other worlds, every trade deal we made, every friendship we built, every piece of technology we shared or received, it was all leading to this moment. Captain Valana felt a chill of understanding. You planned this transformation 50 years ago? Not consciously. But humans have always been explorers, traders, diplomats. We spread across the galaxy not because we wanted to conquer it, but because we wanted to understand it. When the time came to defend it, that understanding became our greatest weapon. The displays showed the galaxy as the humans now saw it. Not as separate species and worlds, but as one vast interconnected system. Trade routes became neural pathways. Communication networks became thought processes. Military alliances became reflexes. You have turned the entire galaxy into an extension of your collective consciousness, philosopher Jinwei observed. We have shown the galaxy how to think as one organism, Dr. Chun corrected. The choice to join us belongs to each species, each world, each individual. What happens to those who choose not to join? Dr. Chin's expression became sad. They will be protected anyway. We will not abandon anyone to the harvesters, no matter what they choose. Commander Zethkar stepped forward. Dr. Chun, what do you need from us? Why did you show us all this? Because the harvesters will arrive in less than 18 months, she replied. And because we cannot complete our preparations without the cooperation of the major galactic powers. We need the Quindish military networks. We need Veltar communication systems. We need the hegemony's industrial capacity. What about the coming war, the political tensions you detected? We are already solving those problems, Dr. Chun said. The displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy. Economic disputes being resolved through trade agreements that benefited all parties. Military buildups being redirected toward defensive preparations. Diplomatic crises being diffused through information sharing and mutual understanding. You are manipulating galactic politics? Captain Valana asked. We are providing better information and better options, Dr. Chun replied. When leaders understand the real consequences of their choices, they usually make better decisions. Science. Officer Thexul was studying the timeline data. Dr. Chun, if the harvesters arrive in 18 months, do we have enough time to prepare adequate defenses? If every major species cooperates fully, yes. If they insist on maintaining their old patterns of competition and secrecy, no. The displays showed projection models for different scenarios. In some, the galaxy successfully defended itself against the harvester fleets. In others, entire star systems went dark one by one until nothing remained. The difference between success and failure, Dr. Chun continued, is whether the galaxy can learn to work together as humans learn to work together. Commander Zethkar looked at his fellow investigators. Dr. Chun, how do we convince our governments to cooperate with a species that has become something they do not understand? By showing them what we have shown you, she replied. And by proving that we are still human where it matters most. She gestured again, and the massive processing center filled with new sounds. Music, laughter, crying, voices speaking in hundreds of languages. The sounds of human emotion, preserved and amplified through the collective consciousness. We have not lost our humanity, Dr. Chun said. We have multiplied it. Every joy is shared by 8 billion minds. Every sorrow is comforted by 8 billion hearts. Every fear is faced with 8 billion sources of courage. Captain Valana felt tears in her eyes. You are still human. We are more human than we have ever been, Dr. Chun replied. And we are ready to help the galaxy become more than it has ever been. The displays around them now showed the approaching harvester fleets, the current state of galactic politics, and the timeline of preparation that lay ahead. The choice is simple, Dr. Chun said. We can face the future together, or we can face it alone, but either way we will face it. Philosopher Jinwei spoke quietly. What do you need us to do? Dr. Chun smiled. Go back to your governments. Show them what you have seen. Tell them what is coming, and help them understand that the old ways of thinking about the galaxy must change. And if they refuse, then we will protect them anyway, Dr. Chun said simply. Because that is what humans do. We protect those we care about, even when they do not want our protection. The investigation team stood in silence, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's incredible transformation and the magnitude of the threat approaching from beyond the stars. Dr. Chun, Captain Valana said finally, how can we be certain that you are telling us the truth? Dr. Chun's form became more solid, more real. For a moment, she looked exactly like the human scientist she had been before the silence began. Because, Captain, we are about to show the galaxy something that will prove everything we have told you. Tomorrow we break our silence. Tomorrow we reveal ourselves to everyone. And tomorrow the real work begins. The investigation fleet left Earth's atmosphere carrying information that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Valana sat in her command chair, watching the blue planet grow smaller behind them. In 12 hours, every government in the galaxy would receive the same message that humanity was about to broadcast. Captain, incoming transmission from Quindish High Command, reported her communications officer. Put it through. General Dexmore's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was grim. Captain Valana, what is your status? We have been monitoring unusual energy readings from Earth. General, we have made contact with the humans. They are different now, but they are still alive and they have information that the High Command needs to hear immediately. What kind of information? Captain Valana took a deep breath. Information about an invasion fleet approaching from outside our galaxy, and information about how the humans have spent the last 3 months preparing our defenses. General Dexmore's 6 arms moved with agitation. Captain, that makes no sense. General, I am sending you all our recorded data now, but I suggest you gather the full military council. What we learned on Earth will require decisions that affect every world in Quindish space. As the Deep Seeker transmitted its data to the Quindish homeworld, similar conversations were taking place on the other ships. Commander Zethkar was speaking with the Veltar Council of Sciences. Philosopher Jinwei was reporting to the Eternal Gathering. Each species was about to learn that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was wrong. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, something unprecedented was beginning to happen. On Veltar Prime, the communication monitoring stations that had been quiet for 3 months suddenly came alive. But instead of the usual chaotic human chatter, there was one clear signal broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. On the Kresh homeworld, military commanders paused their war planning as their communication systems received a message that bypassed all their security protocols. In hegemony space, Overlord Vashti was meeting with her council when every screen in the chamber displayed the same image, the Earth, glowing with patterns of light that pulsed like a heartbeat throughout. The galaxy on every world where intelligent life existed, the same message began to play. It was spoken in every language, transmitted on every frequency, delivered through every communication network that existed. The voice was calm and clear, unmistakably human, but somehow larger than any individual voice should be. Citizens of the galaxy, this is humanity speaking. We apologize for our silence these past months. We have been working on a problem that affects us all. On hundreds of worlds, billions of beings stopped what they were doing to listen. 3 months ago, we discovered 2 critical pieces of information. First, our galaxy was heading toward a devastating war that would weaken or destroy most civilizations. Second, while we fought each other, an external threat was approaching that would consume everything we leave behind. Images appeared on every screen showing the approaching harvester fleets and the evidence of destroyed galaxies. We chose to transform ourselves rather than watch helplessly as everyone we cared about faced extinction. We became something new, something capable of seeing solutions that individual minds could not find. The images changed, showing the improvements humanity had made to infrastructure throughout the galaxy over the past months. We have been working to prevent the war and prepare defenses against the external threat. We have done this quietly, without permission, because we knew that asking for permission would waste time we did not have. On Quindish Prime, General Dexmore was reviewing the data from Captain Valana's investigation. His tactical officers were confirming that human modifications to their communication networks had indeed been made, but the changes had improved efficiency by 300%. We understand that our transformation frightens you. We understand that our methods seem presumptuous. But we also understand something else. In 15 months, the harvester fleets will reach the outer edge of our galaxy. If we are not ready, none of our concerns about politics or territory or independence will matter. The message continued, but now it became personal. On every world, the voice spoke directly to the local population in their own language, addressing their specific concerns and fears. On the Kresh homeworld, the message spoke of honor and the glory of defending one's people against impossible odds. On Veltar Prime, it discussed the scientific principles behind the new technologies and the research opportunities they offered. In hegemony space, it presented detailed political and economic analyses showing how cooperation would benefit all parties. We offer you a choice, the voice said on every world. You can join us willingly, contributing your strengths to our collective defense. You can remain independent while accepting our protection. Or you can oppose us, though we hope you will not choose that path. On hundreds of worlds, government leaders were frantically calling emergency sessions. Military commanders were analyzing threat assessments. Scientists were studying the technical data humanity was freely sharing, but the most dramatic response came from an unexpected source. In the Outer Rim territories, where lawless pirates and raiders had operated for decades. Something remarkable happened. The criminal organizations that had been the galaxy's biggest problem suddenly began shutting down their operations. Not because they were defeated or driven away, but because they were choosing to join humanity's cause. Captain Rex Voidhawk, the most notorious pirate in the galaxy, sent a message that was broadcast throughout the criminal underworld. I have seen what is coming for us from beyond the stars. I have seen what the humans are building to stop it. Any crew that wants to spend their last days fighting over scraps while extinction approaches is welcome to do so without me. The rest of us have work to do. Within hours, pirate fleets throughout the galaxy were arriving at human colonies, volunteering their ships and crews for the defense preparations. The transformation was not limited to criminals. Trade unions across the galaxy voted to suspend all labor disputes and focus on defense production. Scientific organizations began sharing research that had been kept secret for decades. Even military forces that had been preparing for war against each other started coordinating their activities on Veltar Prime. Commander Zethkar was meeting with the Council of Sciences when the chief scientist made an announcement that shocked everyone. The human modifications to our communication networks have given us capabilities we never imagined possible, she said. We can now share research data across our entire civilization instantly. We can coordinate scientific projects involving thousands of researchers simultaneously. We can solve problems in hours that used to take years. Similar reports were coming from across the galaxy. The quiet improvements humanity had made were revealing their true purpose. They were not just defensive preparations, but tools for unprecedented cooperation. But not everyone was convinced. On the Kresh homeworld, War Marshal Gorthuk addressed his assembled generals with typical Kresh directness. The humans ask us to trust them, but they have already proven they can manipulate our systems without our knowledge. How do we know they will not use these same capabilities to control us? It was a valid concern and one that humanity had anticipated. The answer came not as words, but as actions. Throughout Kresh space, the human modifications to their networks suddenly became visible. Instead of hidden subroutines running in the background, the improvements were now displayed openly, with complete technical documentation available for examination. More importantly, humanity began demonstrating that their power could be shared rather than hoarded. On worlds that chose to cooperate, local populations found themselves able to access the collective human intelligence network. Not as passive recipients, but as active participants. Veltar scientists could suddenly think with the processing power of an entire planet. Quindish military strategists could analyze battlefield scenarios with unprecedented precision. Even individual citizens found themselves able to solve problems and understand concepts that had been beyond their reach before. But they remained themselves. Their personalities, their cultures, their individual thoughts were not absorbed or lost. Instead, they were enhanced and supported by connection to something larger. The demonstration was so powerful that even the most skeptical governments began to reconsider their positions. On the hegemony capital world, Overlord Vashti called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Chamber, but this time the meeting was different. Instead of the usual political maneuvering and territorial disputes, everyone was focused on a single question. How should the galaxy respond to humanity's offer? The debate was intense but surprisingly short. When species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves agreeing on fundamental principles, it became clear that something fundamental had changed. The turning point came when philosopher Jinwei addressed the council. Honored representatives, we face a choice between our old fears and our new hopes. Our old fears tell us to distrust anything we do not understand. to protect our independence above all else, to compete rather than cooperate. Our new hopes tell us that perhaps there is a better way to exist in this universe. She gestured to the displays showing the approaching harvester fleets. The evidence is clear. The threat is real. And the humans have shown us not just weapons to fight it, but tools to become something better than we have ever been. The question is not whether we trust them. The question is whether we trust ourselves to be worthy of what they are offering. The vote was unanimous. Within 1 week of humanity's awakening, every major government in the galaxy had agreed to join the collective defense effort. More importantly, they had agreed to try the new form of existence that humanity was offering. The transformation was not instant. It took months for the full integration to be completed. But as it progressed, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had imagined possible. Wars that had raged for decades ended overnight as the underlying causes were understood and resolved. Economic problems that had seemed impossible to solve were addressed through coordinated action across multiple star systems. Scientific breakthroughs that would have taken centuries occurred in weeks. But the most remarkable change was in how the galaxy's citizens saw each other. When a Veltar scientist could experience the thought processes of a Quindish engineer, when a human artist could share emotions with an eternal philosopher, when a Kresh warrior could understand the peaceful nature of a trader, the artificial, barriers between species began to dissolve. The galaxy was becoming one civilization while remaining many cultures. And just in time, 12 months after humanity's awakening, the first Harvester Scouts appeared at the galactic edge. They found not a collection of separate, warring species, but a unified civilization ready to defend itself. The first contact with the Harvesters was brief. The scout ships approached a human-defended system expecting to find the usual pattern of primitive technology and disorganized resistance. Instead, they encountered defenses that operated on principles their science could not explain, coordinated by an intelligence that could predict and counter their every move. The scout ships retreated to report their findings to the main fleet, but humanity was already preparing for their return. In the depths of space, massive construction projects were nearing completion. Not weapons, but something far more powerful. A network of reality anchors that would prevent the Harvesters from using their most devastating technologies. Quantum disruption fields that would make their ships vulnerable to conventional weapons. And most importantly, communication arrays that would allow the galaxy's new collective intelligence to operate at faster than light speeds across any distance. When the Harvester fleets arrived in force, they found something they had never encountered. In 7 previous galaxies, a civilization that refused to be conquered. The war that followed was unlike anything the universe had seen before. Not a battle between technologies or armies, but a contest between 2 completely different ways of existing. The Harvesters represented consumption, domination, the reduction of complex civilizations to useful resources. The galaxy, guided by humanity's vision, represented cooperation, growth, the transformation of individual minds into something greater without losing what made them unique. The outcome was never really in doubt. A species that could unite 8 billion minds into one intelligence, that could transform an entire galaxy while preserving every culture within it, that could offer hope instead of conquest, was always going to be more powerful than destroyers who had nothing to offer except death. But the real victory was not defeating the Harvesters. The real victory was what the galaxy had become in preparing to face them. Earth was no longer silent, but it no longer spoke with the chaotic voice of individual humans trying to understand a vast universe. Now it spoke with the voice of an entire galaxy that had learned to think as one mind while celebrating every unique thought within it. And across the cosmos, other galaxies that had received humanity's message were beginning their own transformations, preparing for the day when they too would face the Harvesters, but this time with the knowledge that there was a better way to exist in the universe. The silence had ended. The awakening had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.